The busy halls of Atlanta General Hospital were filled with the usual sounds of rolling wheels, beeping machines, and hurried footsteps. Among the crowd walked Jasmine Taylor, a 28-year-old physical therapist whose bright smile could light up even the gloomiest hospital room. Her dark skin glowed with natural beauty, and her curly hair was neatly tied back in a professional bun as she made her way to the hospital cafe for her much-needed lunch break. It had been a long morning of helping patients recover from various injuries, and Jasmine's feet were tired. All she wanted was a quiet corner to enjoy her sandwich and maybe catch up on some reading. But fate had other plans for her that day. The hospital cafe was unusually crowded. Every table was taken except for one, where a man in a wheelchair sat alone, focused on his laptop. Jasmine stood at the entrance, holding her lunch tray, looking around hopefully for an empty spot. The man in the wheelchair noticed her and waved her over with a friendly smile. "Would you like to share the table?" he asked, his voice warm and welcoming. "I promise I don't bite." Jasmine couldn't help but laugh at his joke. "Thank you, that's very kind," she said, walking over to his table. As she sat down, she noticed how handsome he was. The man had kind brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and his chocolate-colored skin had a healthy glow. He wore a crisp blue button-down shirt and expensive-looking glasses that gave him a smart, professional appearance. "I'm Marcus Bennett," he said, extending his hand. "Tech entrepreneur and part-time hospital resident, it seems." Jasmine shook his hand, noticing how firm and confident his grip was. "Jasmine Taylor. I'm a physical therapist here at Atlanta General." "A physical therapist?" Marcus's eyes lit up with interest. "Maybe you can explain why my current PT keeps torturing me with those endless leg exercises." "Well," Jasmine said, taking a bite of her sandwich, "those exercises help prevent muscle atrophy and maintain circulation. Even if you can't move your legs now, keeping them healthy is important for your overall health." Marcus raised his eyebrows, impressed by her straightforward explanation. "Finally, someone who doesn't treat me like I'm made of glass. You won't believe how many people tiptoe around the subject of my disability." Over the next hour, they talked about everything from the latest advances in assistive technology. Marcus's company was developing new apps for people with disabilities, to their favorite TV shows. Jasmine found herself fascinated by his brilliant mind and positive attitude. Despite being paralyzed from the waist down after a car accident 3 years ago, Marcus spoke about his life with enthusiasm and humor. "The accident changed my life," he explained, "but not in the way most people think. It made me realize what really matters. I used to be this workaholic CEO who never had time for anything but making money. Now, I'm building technology that actually helps people." Jasmine listened intently, admiring how Marcus had turned his tragedy into something meaningful. She also couldn't help noticing how his whole face lit up when he talked about his work, and how he used his hands expressively while speaking. The lunch hour flew by, and Jasmine was surprised when her phone alarm reminded her of her next appointment. As she stood to leave, Marcus seemed reluctant to end their conversation. "I have regular PT sessions here 3 times a week," he said, trying to sound casual. "Maybe we'll run into each other again?" Jasmine smiled, feeling a flutter in her stomach that she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Maybe we will," she replied. "Same time tomorrow?" Marcus's face broke into a wide grin. "It's a date. I mean, not a date, unless, would you like it to be?" His nervousness was adorable, and Jasmine found herself nodding. "Yes, I think I would." As she walked back to her department, Jasmine couldn't wipe the smile off her face. She had met many patients in wheelchairs before, but something about Marcus was different. He didn't let his disability define him, and his confidence and intelligence were truly attractive. Little did Jasmine know that this chance meeting in a crowded hospital cafe would change her life forever. Sometimes, love shows up in the most unexpected places, and the heart sees no barriers when it finds its match. News of Jasmine and Marcus's relationship spread quickly through both their families. The regular cafe meetings had turned into proper dates, and after 3 months of getting to know each other, they were officially a couple. However, not everyone was as happy about their relationship as they were. One Sunday afternoon, Jasmine sat in her mother Gloria's small but cozy kitchen, watching her mom stir a pot of her famous gumbo with more force than necessary. The spicy aroma filled the air, but the tension was even thicker than the stew. "Baby girl," Gloria said, putting down her wooden spoon. I'm just worried about you. Taking care of a disabled man isn't easy. Have you really thought this through? Jasmine took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Mama, Marcus doesn't need anyone to take care of him. He's independent, successful, and one of the smartest people I've ever met. But what about children? What about your future? Gloria pressed on, her face creased with concern. You're only 28. You deserve a normal life. My life is normal, Mama, Jasmine replied firmly. And Marcus makes it better. Why can't you see that? Meanwhile, across town in the wealthy Buckhead neighborhood of Atlanta, Marcus was facing his own battle. His parents had invited him to their mansion for their weekly family dinner, but tonight was different. His mother, Elizabeth Bennet, sat perfectly poised in her designer dress, while his father, Richard, paced the elegant living room. Son, we've done some research on this girl, Richard began, his voice stern. She comes from a modest background. Are you sure she's not after your money? Marcus's grip tightened on his wheelchair armrests. Dad, Jasmine didn't even know about our family's wealth when we met. She loves me for who I am, not what I have. But darling, his mother chimed in, there are so many suitable girls from our social circle who would be happy to date you, despite your condition. Despite my condition? Marcus's voice rose slightly. Jasmine has never seen my wheelchair as a problem. She sees me as a whole person, which is more than I can say for some people right now. Over the next few months, both Jasmine and Marcus worked hard to prove their families wrong. Marcus started joining Jasmine's family for their Sunday dinners, charming Gloria with his knowledge of soul food and genuine interest in her stories about growing up in rural Georgia. He helped Jasmine's younger brother with his college applications and even fixed her father's ancient computer. Jasmine, in turn, impressed Marcus's wealthy family with her intelligence and grace. At charity galas and business dinners, she held her own in conversations about healthcare policy and technology. She showed them that her love for Marcus was genuine, and her career as a physical therapist proved she was already successful in her own right. But the real breakthrough came 6 months into their relationship, when Marcus got sick with a bad case of flu. Without being asked, Jasmine took a few days off work to care for him. She stayed at his house, making sure he took his medicine and helping him when he was too weak to transfer himself from his wheelchair to his bed. One evening, as she was making him chicken soup in his kitchen, Marcus's mother stopped by unexpectedly. Elizabeth Bennet stood in the doorway, watching Jasmine move around the kitchen with easy familiarity, singing softly to herself as she cooked. You really love him, don't you? Elizabeth asked quietly. Jasmine turned around, surprised by her presence. Yes, Mrs. Bennet, I do. More than I thought possible. Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. I've been so wrong about you, dear. I see now what Marcus sees. From that day forward, the barriers began to fall. Both families started to see what Jasmine and Marcus had known all along, that love doesn't care about wheelchairs, bank accounts, or skin color. By their first anniversary, even the biggest skeptics had to admit that they were perfect for each other. Marcus and Jasmine's relationship grew stronger with each passing day. They learned to navigate the world together, finding creative solutions to any challenges they faced. Marcus showed Jasmine the joy of stargazing from his specially adapted rooftop garden, while she introduced him to the pleasure of cooking together in his wheelchair-accessible kitchen. They were proving to everyone that true love knows no boundaries, but neither of them knew that their greatest adventure and biggest surprise was still to come. Marcus had been planning this moment for months. Every detail needed to be perfect. His hands shook slightly as he checked his phone for the 15th time that evening. The weather forecast still showed clear skies, perfect for his rooftop proposal plan. His smart home system had been programmed for the special evening. As the sun began to set, the automated blinds opened to reveal the Atlanta skyline, and soft jazz music filled the air. Marcus had transformed his rooftop garden into a magical space, with hundreds of tiny lights twinkling among the plants. A small table was set up near the edge, offering a breathtaking view of the city. At exactly 7:00 p.m., Jasmine knocked on his door. She was wearing a simple red dress. Her favorite color, and her natural curls framed her face beautifully. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat when he saw her. Wow, he said, his eyes wide. You look amazing. Jasmine smiled, noticing that Marcus was dressed more formally than usual in a crisp black suit. You clean up pretty nice yourself, she teased. What's the special occasion? Can't a guy just want to have a nice dinner with his girlfriend? Marcus replied with a mysterious smile. He led her to his special elevator, one of the many adaptations in his smart home that made his life easier. As they reached the rooftop, Jasmine gasped. The entire space had been transformed. Fairy lights twinkled everywhere, and their favorite songs played softly in the background. The small table was set with fine china and crystal glasses, with her favorite flowers, white roses, in the center. Marcus, this is beautiful, she whispered, taking in the magical scene. They enjoyed a delicious dinner that Marcus had arranged from their favorite restaurant. They talked and laughed, remembering funny moments from their 18 months together. As they finished their dessert, chocolate lava cake that reminded them of their first date, Marcus knew it was time. Want to look at the stars? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. He moved his wheelchair toward the telescope he had set up earlier. Jasmine followed, wrapping a soft shawl around her shoulders against the evening breeze. The city lights sparkled below them, but the stars above shone even brighter. Take a look, Marcus said, gesturing to the telescope. I think you'll see something interesting. Jasmine bent down to look through the telescope. At first, she saw only stars, but then something caught her eye. A small drone hovered in the distance, carrying a banner that read, "Will you marry me, Jasmine?" When she turned around, her hands covering her mouth in surprise, she saw something that made her eyes fill with tears. Marcus had activated his wheelchair's elevation feature, a recent addition he'd been practicing with for weeks. The chair slowly rose until he was almost at standing height. Then, using the wheelchair's special stabilizing system and all his upper body strength, Marcus did something extraordinary. He shifted his position and, with the help of the chair's support, lowered himself to one knee. Jasmine Taylor, he said, his voice full of emotion as he pulled out a small velvet box. From the moment you shared your lunch table with me at the hospital, you've brought more joy into my life than I ever thought possible. You've never seen my wheelchair as a barrier. You've helped me become a better man, and you've shown me what true love really means. Tears were flowing freely down Jasmine's cheeks now. Marcus continued, opening the box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring. You are the strongest, kindest, most beautiful woman I've ever known. Every day with you is an adventure, and I want to spend the rest of my life having adventures with you. Will you marry me? Jasmine knelt down beside him, not caring that her dress touched the ground. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, just like they did together. As they kissed under the starlit sky, the city lights twinkling below them, both knew that this was just the beginning of their greatest adventure. Neither of them could have guessed then that an even bigger surprise awaited them on their wedding day. For now, they simply held each other close, their hearts full of love and dreams of their future together. The months following the proposal were filled with busy wedding preparations. Jasmine and Marcus wanted their special day to be perfect, but planning a fully accessible wedding brought its own unique challenges. They spent countless hours visiting venues, tasting cakes, and making sure every detail would work for everyone. One sunny Saturday morning, Jasmine sat in her favorite bridal boutique, surrounded by white dresses and excited chatter. Her mother Gloria, future mother-in-law Elizabeth, and her best friend Tanya watched as she tried on her 5th wedding dress of the day. This is it, Jasmine said softly, turning in front of the mirror. The ivory dress hugged her curves perfectly before flowing out into a beautiful train. It's not too long that Marcus might roll over it, and look, it even sparkles when I move. Elizabeth dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. You look absolutely beautiful, dear. My son won't know what hit him. While the women discussed veils and accessories, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Sorry, have to skip dinner tonight. Important medical appointment came up. Jasmine frowned. This was the 3rd time this month Marcus had cancelled their evening plans due to mysterious appointments. When she asked about them, he always changed the subject or said it was just routine checkups. Something felt different about his behavior, but she couldn't quite figure out what. One evening, she stopped by his house unexpectedly with some wedding cake samples. Through the window, she saw Marcus in his home office, apparently in a serious video call. He was talking to someone who looked like a doctor, and there were medical diagrams on his screen. When she knocked, He quickly ended the call and closed his laptop. "Jasmine, I wasn't expecting you," he said, wheeling over to kiss her. His smile seemed nervous. "Is everything okay?" she asked, setting down the cake boxes. "You've been having a lot of appointments lately." Marcus took her hand, his expression softening. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just some routine medical stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." He quickly changed the subject to the cake samples, but Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that he was keeping something from her. The wedding planning continued. They found a beautiful venue with ramps and elevators, and worked with a dance instructor who specialized in wheelchair ballroom dancing. Marcus insisted on practicing their first dance repeatedly, wanting it to be perfect. But the strange patterns continued. Sometimes, Jasmine would call Marcus late at night, only to hear whispered conversations in the background before he hung up. Other times, she noticed him wincing in pain when he thought she wasn't looking, as if his physical therapy sessions had been particularly hard. One day, while dropping off their wedding invitations at Marcus's office, his assistant Sarah accidentally let something slip. "Oh, the doctor called about the trial results." Sarah stopped mid-sentence, her eyes going wide. "I mean, about the trial subscription to that medical journal you wanted." Jasmine's heart raced. Trial results? Was Marcus sick? Was there something wrong that he wasn't telling her? She tried to ask more questions, but Sarah quickly made an excuse and left the room. When Jasmine brought it up that evening, Marcus held her hands and looked into her eyes. "Do you trust me?" he asked softly. "Of course I do," she replied. "Then please believe me when I say that nothing is wrong. Everything I'm doing is for us, for our future. You'll understand everything on our wedding day. Can you wait until then?" Looking into his warm brown eyes, full of love and sincerity, Jasmine nodded. Whatever secret Marcus was keeping, she knew it came from a place of love. The wedding was now just 2 weeks away. Every detail was falling into place. The flowers were ordered, the cake was designed, and their special wheelchair-accessible dance was rehearsed to perfection. Yet beneath all the normal wedding excitement, there was an undercurrent of mystery that made Jasmine's heart flutter with anticipation. Little did she know that Marcus's secret would create a moment that none of their wedding guests would ever forget. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and beautiful. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the bridal suite at the Grand Atlanta Hotel, where Jasmine sat in front of a large mirror as her makeup artist worked on creating the perfect look. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her phone, reading a text message from Marcus. "Can't wait to make you Mrs. Bennett. I have something amazing planned for you today. Stop fidgeting." Gloria, her mother, said while adjusting the veil. "You're going to mess up your makeup." But even as she scolded her daughter, tears of joy glistened in her eyes. The past year had proven how wrong she'd been about Marcus, and now she couldn't imagine a better match for her daughter. In another room of the hotel, Marcus was getting ready with his groomsmen. His best man, David, noticed that Marcus seemed unusually nervous, constantly checking his phone and adjusting something under his suit jacket. "You okay, man?" David asked, helping Marcus with his bow tie. "You seem really tense." Marcus took a deep breath. "Just nervous about everything going according to plan." "Is the doctor here yet?" "Dr. Chen arrived 10 minutes ago. Everything is set up exactly as you planned," David assured him, "though I still think you should have told Jasmine about." "No," Marcus interrupted firmly. "I want it to be a complete surprise. She deserves this moment to be perfect." Back in the bridal suite, Jasmine stood up carefully as her bridesmaids helped her into her wedding dress. The ivory gown flowed beautifully around her curves, with delicate beading that caught the light with every movement. Her natural curls were styled elegantly, with tiny white flowers woven through them. "You look like a queen," Tanya, her maid of honor, whispered, carefully adjusting the train. "Marcus is going to cry when he sees you." As the guests began filling the ceremony space, everyone admired the thoughtful details. The aisle was extra wide to accommodate Marcus's wheelchair, and beautiful flowers decorated the specially built ramps. The ground was perfectly level, and the altar had been designed so that Jasmine and Marcus would be at the same height during their vows. The ceremony began with soft music playing. Marcus wheeled himself down the aisle first, looking handsome in his black tuxedo. His parents walked beside him, both beaming with pride. Those who knew him well noticed that he seemed to be sitting unusually straight in his chair, and there appeared to be something bulky beneath his jacket, but most guests were too focused on the emotion of the moment to notice these details. Then the bridal march began to play, and everyone stood. Jasmine appeared at the entrance with her father, and the whole room gasped. She was breathtaking. Her dress sparkled in the light streaming through the stained glass windows, and her smile lit up the entire room. As she walked down the aisle, her eyes locked with Marcus's, and in that moment, they were the only two people in the world. When she reached the altar, Jasmine's father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Marcus's. The pastor began the ceremony, speaking about love that overcomes all obstacles and sees beyond physical limitations to the heart within. During their vows, both Marcus and Jasmine had prepared their own words. Jasmine went first, her voice strong and clear despite her tears. Marcus, you've shown me what true love really means. It's not about what a person can or cannot do. It's about who they are in their heart. You make me laugh, you challenge me to grow, and you love me without conditions. I promise to be your partner in all things, to face every challenge by your side, and to love you more each day than the day before. When it was Marcus's turn, his voice shook slightly, but his eyes never left Jasmine's. Jasmine, you saw me when others only saw my wheelchair. You love me for who I am, not in spite of my challenges, but including them as part of who I am. You're the strongest, most beautiful soul I've ever known. I promise to love you, honor you, and surprise you with joy for all the days of our life together. As they exchanged rings, Marcus's hands trembled noticeably, and there was a gleam in his eyes that suggested he was holding back not just tears, but an enormous secret. The pastor pronounced them husband and wife, and their kiss was met with thunderous applause. What none of the guests knew was that the biggest moment of the day was yet to come. As they headed to the reception, Marcus's heart raced with anticipation of the surprise that would change everything. The wedding reception was in full swing at the Grand Atlanta Hotel's ballroom. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and the room was filled with the sound of happy chatter and clinking glasses. Jasmine and Marcus sat at the head table, surrounded by their closest family and friends. Jasmine couldn't stop smiling, occasionally glancing at her new wedding ring with joy. But something was different about Marcus. He kept checking his watch and whispering with his best man, David. Dr. Chen, whom Jasmine recognized from Marcus's rehabilitation center, was sitting at a nearby table, also checking his watch frequently. Even Marcus's physical therapist was there, looking excited about something. Is everything okay? Jasmine asked Marcus softly, touching his arm. You seem nervous. Marcus took her hand and kissed it gently. Everything is perfect, he replied. Actually, it's time for me to give you your wedding gift. Before Jasmine could respond, David stood up and clinked his glass for attention. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the head table. Marcus wheeled himself to the center of the dance floor, his wheelchair stopping directly under the crystal chandelier. My beautiful wife, Marcus began, his voice strong but full of emotion. For the past year, I've been keeping a secret from you. He paused as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Every time I canceled our dinner plans, every late-night phone call, every mysterious appointment, they were all part of something bigger. Jasmine's heart began to race. She noticed Dr. Chen and two medical assistants moving closer to the dance floor. 6 months ago, Marcus continued, I was selected for an experimental medical trial. A new type of robotic assistance technology that could help people with spinal cord injuries like mine. His voice shook slightly. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to get your hopes up. The chances of success were small, and I needed to focus completely on the training. He gestured to David, who walked over carrying what looked like a small remote control. Dr. Chen and his assistants took positions around Marcus. Under my suit, Marcus said, I'm wearing something called an exoskeleton. It's a medical device that can help me stand and walk for short periods. He looked directly at Jasmine, whose hands were covering her mouth in shock. I've been training with it in secret, wanting to surprise you on our wedding day. The room was completely silent now. Everyone held their breath as Marcus pressed a button on his wheelchair. There was a soft whirring sound, and then, slowly, Marcus began to move. First, the wheelchair's special supports helped him into a standing position. Then, with the exoskeleton providing support and balance, Marcus took one careful step forward. The room gasped collectively. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as she watched her husband, who she had only ever known in a wheelchair, take another step and another. Marcus's face was focused with concentration as he walked a short distance to where Jasmine sat. His movements were slow and mechanical, but he was walking. When he reached her, he held out his hand. "Mrs. Bennet," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "would you do me the honor of sharing our first dance, standing up?" Jasmine could barely see through her tears as she stood and took his hand. "How?" she whispered. "How did you do this?" "Love," Marcus replied simply. "Love made me want to give you this moment. The doctors gave me the tools, but thinking of you gave me the strength to learn how to use them." The music began to play, their song, At Last, by Etta James. With the help of the exoskeleton, Marcus held Jasmine close as they swayed gently to the music. They weren't doing any fancy moves, just holding each other and turning slowly, but to everyone watching, it was the most beautiful dance they had ever seen. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Gloria sobbed openly into her handkerchief, while Elizabeth and Richard Bennet held each other tight, watching their son dance with his bride. Even Dr. Chen wiped away a tear, proud to see months of hard work and training paid off in this magical moment. As they danced, Marcus whispered in Jasmine's ear, "I wanted to show you that with enough love and determination, nothing is impossible. This isn't a cure. I'll still need my wheelchair most of the time. But now we can share moments like this too." Jasmine looked up at him, her heart so full of love it felt like it might burst. "You've already given me everything I could ever want," she said, "just by being you." The ballroom was filled with a magical energy as Marcus and Jasmine continued their first dance. The soft glow of the chandelier created a perfect spotlight for the couple as they moved together to the music. Everyone watched in amazement as Marcus, supported by his revolutionary exoskeleton, held his bride close. Tanya, standing near the dance floor with her camera, captured every precious moment. Through her lens, she could see the pure joy radiating from Jasmine's face and the look of deep concentration mixed with love on Marcus's. The photos would later become treasured memories that would tell their incredible story for years to come. "I can't believe you learned to do this for me," Jasmine whispered as they swayed to the music. Her makeup had long since been marked by tears of joy, but she didn't care. "How long did it take?" Marcus smiled, carefully adjusting his balance with the help of the exoskeleton. 6 months of training, 3 hours every day. Some days were really hard, and there were times I wanted to give up. He paused to take a careful step, but then I would think about this moment, about holding you in my arms while we danced, and it gave me strength to continue. From their table, Marcus's parents watched with tears streaming down their faces. Elizabeth leaned over to Gloria, squeezing her hand. "Did you know about this?" she asked Jasmine's mother. Gloria shook her head, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Not a word. That boy really does love our girl, doesn't he?" "And she loves him," Elizabeth replied, watching as Jasmine carefully supported Marcus when he needed to shift his weight. Even in this incredible moment, they worked together as a perfect team. Dr. Chen stood nearby with his medical team, monitoring Marcus's vital signs through a discreet tablet. He smiled proudly, remembering the countless hours of preparation that had led to this moment. Marcus had been one of his most determined patients, pushing through pain and frustration, never losing sight of his goal. The exoskeleton softly whirred as Marcus turned slowly with Jasmine. He had insisted on practicing this dance hundreds of times in physical therapy, wanting every movement to be as smooth as possible. Now, despite the mechanical assistance, their dance looked natural and flowing, a testament to his dedication. David, who had kept Marcus's secret all these months, filmed the dance on his phone. He caught the moment when Marcus whispered something in Jasmine's ear that made her laugh through her tears. He recorded the way Jasmine's hand gently steadied Marcus's arm when he needed extra support, how they moved together as if they'd been dancing this way their whole lives. Some of the wedding guests had taken out their phones to record the historic moment, but most were simply watching in awe. The room was filled with sniffles and happy tears as everyone witnessed what seemed like a miracle born of love and determination. "I practiced something else too," Marcus said softly as the song was coming to an end. Slowly, carefully, he leaned down and kissed Jasmine. The crowd burst into applause and cheers, celebrating not just their love, the triumph of the human spirit they had just witnessed. As the song ended, Dr. Chen and his assistants moved forward to help Marcus back to his wheelchair. The exoskeleton had limitations, and they didn't want to risk overtiring him. But before sitting down, Marcus turned to address their guests. Thank you all for sharing this moment with us, he said, his voice full of emotion. I want everyone to know that this technology is still in development. I'll still need my wheelchair most days, but tonight wasn't about showing off a medical breakthrough. It was about showing my beautiful wife that love can make impossible things possible. Jasmine wrapped her arms around him as he settled back into his wheelchair, not caring that her expensive wedding dress was getting crushed. You've already shown me that every single day since we met, she said. The band started playing again, and other couples joined them on the dance floor. Marcus and Jasmine continued dancing, now with him in his wheelchair, just as they had practiced. Their love shone just as brightly, proving that their bond transcended any physical limitations. The wedding photographers captured dozens of pictures, but the most beautiful one showed the moment right after their dance. Jasmine sitting in Marcus's lap in his wheelchair, both of them laughing and crying at the same time, surrounded by their loving family and friends. It was a perfect snapshot of true love in all its forms. Later that night, after most of the guests had left and the music had quieted down, Marcus and Jasmine sat together on the hotel's rooftop garden. The Atlanta skyline sparkled before them, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine. Marcus had changed out of his exoskeleton and back into comfortable clothes, while Jasmine had swapped her wedding gown for a simple white dress. I still can't believe you did all this, Jasmine said softly, her head resting on Marcus's shoulder as he sat in his wheelchair. All those months of training, keeping it secret. Marcus took her hand, his thumb running over her new wedding ring. There were so many times I almost told you, especially on days when the training was really hard. But I wanted this day to be perfect. As they talked, their phones kept buzzing with messages. Videos of their dance had already spread through their friends and family, touching hearts and inspiring others. Marcus's medical team had received calls from 3 different hospitals wanting to learn more about the experimental exoskeleton program. You know, Jasmine said thoughtfully, her story could help so many other people. Not just the technology, but the message behind it, that love and determination can overcome any obstacle. Marcus smiled, pulling her closer. Our story, he corrected her. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Even when you didn't know what I was doing, your love gave me strength. They discussed their plans for the future. Marcus would continue working with Dr. Chen's team, helping to develop and improve the exoskeleton technology. They wanted to make it more accessible to others with similar injuries. Jasmine had ideas about combining her physical therapy expertise with the new technology to help patients adapt to it. But remember what I said, Marcus added seriously. The wheelchair is still going to be part of our lives. The exoskeleton is amazing, but it's not a miracle cure. I can only use it for short periods. Jasmine turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. Marcus Bennett, I didn't marry you because you could stand up or walk. I married you because you have the biggest heart and strongest spirit of anyone I've ever known. Wheelchair, exoskeleton, or flying carpet, I love all of you. Their conversation was interrupted by a surprise visit from their parents. Gloria and Elizabeth arrived carrying a special dessert they had saved from the wedding cake, while Richard brought champagne. The families that had once been so skeptical of their relationship now couldn't imagine not being united. To the happy couple, Richard toasted as they all raised their glasses. Who taught us that love sees with the heart, not with the eyes. And to new beginnings, Gloria added, wiping away a tear. Y'all showed us what's possible when you believe in love. As their families shared this quiet moment together, Marcus and Jasmine exchanged a look that said more than words ever could. They had overcome every obstacle placed in their path, prejudice, disability, family doubts, and emerged stronger. Their love story had become more than just a romance. It was a testament to the power of faith, determination, and unconditional love. The next morning, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon in Hawaii, where Marcus had already arranged for his medical team to send a backup exoskeleton, Jasmine found a note Marcus had slipped into her purse. It read, My dearest wife, yesterday wasn't just about showing you I could stand or walk. It was about showing you that with you by my side, I feel like I can do anything. You make me want to be better, try harder, dream bigger. Thank you for seeing me, loving me, and believing in me. This is just the beginning of our adventure together. All my love, Marcus. Jasmine tucked the note carefully into her wedding album, knowing it would become one of her most treasured possessions. Their story had already inspired many, but for them, it was simply about two people who saw past every barrier to find true love. As they headed to the airport, they talked excitedly about their future, the house they would build together, the family they hoped to start, the lives they would touch through their work. They knew there would be challenges ahead, but they would face them together, just as they had everything else. Their wedding day had been magical, but both Marcus and Jasmine knew that the real miracle wasn't the few minutes he had spent standing. The real miracle was finding someone who loved you completely, who believed in you unconditionally, and who saw you for exactly who you were. That was the kind of love that could truly change the world.